And welcome to another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Stables Media. I'm Taylor Phillips along with Ed Smith and Frank Vasner. My opening statement, the Michigan Wolverines finally got their head coach Jim Harbaugh a win over the Ohio State Buckeyes, and it feels amazing. And each losing opponent that Michigan and Michigan State faced scored 27 points, while Michigan scored 42 and Michigan State scored 30. Ed, what's your opening statement?
My opening statement, and what could be defined as something that I would categorize as program shifting, redefining, launching, all of it, everything that you want to see happen for this Michigan football program, it finally came to fruition, at least in some part on yesterday, and I can't wait to discuss that in full. Forget about the Lions disappointing on Thanksgiving as usual. This is what everybody's here to see, hear, and talk about today.
Yep, we'll get to that first. Frank, what's your opening statement?
Well, my opening statement relates to the two main college football teams in this state, pulling out two gutty, gritty, resilient, hard-earned wins and responding to adversity in different ways. Michigan kind of exercising a lot of demons that they've had against Ohio State for the last 9 years. They took care of business and beat Ohio State at their own game. Michigan State, on the other hand, they had some guys who had been battling illness and injuries, but they toughed it out and got the job done to get a 10-win season for Mel Tucker.
Yes, they did, and we'll get to that as well, plus the Lions, although it's nothing much to talk about, plus Red Wings and Pistons. But before we get started, this show, the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Stables Media, is sponsored by the Viget Sports mobile app, where great fans cover. Use the hashtag #GreatFansCover to support the app. Download it on your phone from the Apple App Store or Google Play. Sign up and type in the referral code STABLES with a capital S and the rest of the letters being lowercase, including the letter B in the middle as in billionaire for Stables Media. Also a shout out to Cali Tickets. Visit CaliTickets.com or call 877-225-8425 to purchase a ticket to one of their featured events. That's CaliTickets.com or 877-225-8425. Let's get to the game right now, shall we? The Michigan Wolverines coming in at number 5, beating the then number 2 Ohio State Buckeyes 42-27 in Ann Arbor at the Big House in the game. The Wolverines, like I said before in my opening statement, finally getting their head coach Jim Harbaugh a win over the Ohio State Buckeyes. And it felt amazing, of course. Hassan Haskins, 5 touchdowns. 5 touchdowns. No kidding, man. A.J. Henning opened the scoring, of course. Ohio State only had one lead, 10-7. But Hassan Haskins turned on his heavy artillery with Cade McNamara under center, of course. The return of Blake Corum. Plus, the defense had a tough job to do, and they did it with plenty of sacks and rushes forcing incomplete passes. Aiden Hutchinson leading the way, of course, with a few sacks, and a few others getting sacks as well. And Michigan took care of business, like Frank pointed out. And, hey, it was all finally said and done. Ed, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Frank. Ed, you have got to be stoked about this victory, but they can't get too carried away. They got Iowa next in the Big Ten Championship. But let's analyze this game against the Ohio State Buckeyes, shall we?
Oh, my goodness. The multitude and clash of emotions that I'm currently filled with at the moment, just recollecting, in some ways reliving what I saw yesterday over and over again, whether I was at home, whether I was at work, or just hearing you describe the plays to me just now, Taylor, it's as if I'm back watching it all over again. Maybe it's the fact that I'm getting my eyes adjusted to the fact that I was seeing Michigan not only keeping up with Ohio State, but frankly dominating Ohio State in certain aspects and moments of this game. I couldn't believe it, because usually what we've seen the past 2 decades happen to us, it was happening the other way around. We were the ones establishing the edge. We were the ones being aggressive. We were the ones running the ball at will. We were the ones finishing drives, scoring constantly, making stops, making life miserable for the other team with constant pressure, great defense. And I think the fact that this Michigan team knew what they were facing, the firepower that they were facing, first and foremost. It's got to be talked about how they contained and neutralized this Ohio State offense as best as they possibly could. I think they only got one of their scores came off of a rare mistake made by Cade McNamara, but other than that, they held that team in check. The points, because we talked about this. I don't think we get a chance to talk about this enough, but if you notice something in some of their games, like for example against Nebraska, Ohio State was having trouble making plays when it mattered most inside the red zone. And I think that was one key part of Michigan's game plan. Limit the damage Ohio State can do in the red zone. If you can keep the field goals, do it. You increase your chances of winning. We saw what happened. They made their stops. Yeah, they got chunk plays. Yeah, they got big plays. That's the talent that they have. That's the caliber program that they are. They're supposed to do that against you. They're supposed to get theirs. But it's how you respond and how you handle it is what defines what you do in this game. And the fact that in some instances they locked Ohio State up. And even when Ohio State scored, Michigan got back up off the deck. They responded wonderfully. Cade McNamara, I'll say this. For as much criticism that has been levied at this kid all year, and granted, some, if not most of it, has been warranted, the fact that he has been able to take it all in stride, keep his head down, block out the noise, and not only focus on what he has to do, but also making sure that his teammates are on point. There was a snapshot taken of the game at one point when J.J. McCarthy was in. He made a big play. He's pumped up. He's excited. He turns to the sideline. Who's there congratulating him? Cade McNamara, keeping them focused, keeping them motivated. That speaks to you the type of player, the type of teammate that Cade is, and why Jim Harbaugh stuck with him as his primary starting quarterback for this entire season, because he knows what to do. He knows his job. He handles it. He rarely, if ever, makes mistakes that puts the team in bad spots. And even when he does, he knows that he's got a defense that can back him up. But even still, he doesn't, put that unnecessary baggage on them. So regardless of whether, yes, you like to see some instances where they finished more drives with touchdowns instead of field goals, Cade McNamara did his job. The defense did their job. And frankly, when you have something that has worked as so efficiently well as your running game has done all year, why change it? Why go away with it? Yes, it may look mundane. It may look boring. It may look too old school. But the fact that it's worked and produced and gotten you scores and gotten you wins, and the fact that you were hammering Ohio State to the point where they were hoping, that you wouldn't stop running it. You tried throwing it to give themselves a chance. No, you noticed, you took what the defense gave you. You noticed what was working, and until they stopped you, which they couldn't, you hammered it at will. Hassan Haskins, I've mentioned probably at least once or twice before in the past of how sometimes you need you need guys to establish themselves in games like this, whether it be a moment or a series of plays or whole games worth performance, where you create yourself as a legend in the lore of this game. And much like what Tim Biakabatuka did in 1995, that's what Hassan Haskins did today. He put himself in that pantheon, in that discussion. And when you think about the names upon names of Michigan backs that have come before him, Hart, Thomas, Wheatley, Morris, I just mentioned Biakabatuka, the names, it goes on and on and on. Chris Perry, how can I forget him? And the fact that Mike Hart himself, who was made the running backs this coach this year for a reason, was on the sidelines to see that, because remember, he never beat Ohio State as a player. This was his first crack against them in this game on the sidelines as a coach. You don't think he relished and cherished that moment, especially seeing what his running backs are doing? Not just Haskins, Blake Corum showing why his speed, why his playmaking ability was missed when he was out with an ankle injury. Donovan Edwards showing you, yes, the future is now with this kid. The fact that he made a one-handed grab on one play and was also used as a decoy that led to the A.J. Henning touchdown. I love that play call by Josh Mattis. That was an example of, yes, they probably emptied out some of the tricks that they did against Maryland last week, but it didn't empty all of them, as you saw right there. And the fact that they fooled Ohio State on that play was one example, one transcript, essentially, in a nutshell, was what I'm trying to say, of what Michigan was able to do. They kept Ohio State off balance, kept them on their heels, And when it was time to produce, when it was time to close out the deal, that's what they did. They finished drives. They didn't settle for field goals. They were scoring for touchdowns. The only time in the second half that they did not score a touchdown is when they got into victory formation. It was just a perfect storm of efficiency, performance from your offense, your defense. Oh my God, the defense. I knew, and I think I said this last week, the X factor is going to be who's up, who does better in the trenches, who holds up more. And what we saw started and how it ended was completely different on both sides of the ball for both teams. Michigan couldn't really generate too much with the run offensively at the start, but by the end, with those body blows, they kept hitting and hitting and hitting, and they wore them down until finally they put them out the knockout blow. We saw that with the running game, whereas on the defense, the initial pressure, it didn't get as home as you would have liked to have seen in the beginning. That's how CJ Stroud was able to have the time to pull off some of these plays. But once he got hit and once Aiden Hutchinson finally got loose, oh my goodness, the floodwaves open. Aiden Hutchinson not only put himself in the potential discussions to be in New York for the Heisman ceremony in a few short weeks, but he may have just put himself in a position to be talked about not just as a top 10 or a top 5 or even top 3, but maybe potentially your next draft pick of your Detroit Lions come next spring. Possibly. We shall see. He's got the play ability. He's got the motor. And I think, wouldn't you tell me, looking at him, his character, how he carries himself, you mean to tell me he and Dan Campbell wouldn't mesh together? Come on now. I know it's tempting, especially with Thibodeau's out there, but I'm just saying, if you need a guy that is a fit for your culture, fit for your scheme, fit for what you need overall, and just, by the way, happens to be a local kid, which helps with selling something to your fan base, this checks the box. This checks all the boxes, just saying. But Hutchinson had an unbelievable game. Ojabo was also quite a force, quite a presence on that line as well. Josh Ross making a big play. And that was another thing. Michigan's defenders doing what they had to do in the open field, making tackles against Ohio State, because they knew if you can't contain them at that first contact, you're going to be in for a long day. They're going to hurt you over and over again. So the fact that, yes, they knew they were going to give up big plays. They knew they were going to give up chunk plays, but they stopped some of those initial plays, like in the open field, on screens, backfield, whatever it was, they stopped it dead in its tracks. That was factored into everything you wanted to see happen. And Mike McDonald handled this far better and far different than Don Brown could have ever dreamed of, okay? So the fact that you got the combined performances from what the defense did and the offense did, and frankly, a perfect storm, like I mentioned before, with the weather, making it so that way Michigan can do the only thing it knows how to do so pretty damn well and efficient on the ground. And Ohio State committing so many penalties. I was like, oh my goodness, they had what, 10, 11, 12 penalties compared to only 2 for the Wolverines?
Just 2.
I understand that there's going to be ticky-tack calls, and I get that there's going to be some poor officiating, but some of that comes on discipline. Some of that comes on you as a team, whether it be taking the bait on Roman Wilson grabbing your ankles and yanking his doggone helmet off. That was a sportsmanlike penalty. You can't blame the rest for that. That was on you. You retaliated. You responded. You paid the consequence for that. And
yeah, he ripped his helmet off.
Yeah, there was at least a couple false start penalties as well that derailed and set them back on a couple of drives. And I'll say this: what led to that was the atmosphere, the attention of how the fans looked. They were craving this the whole entire way. You could see it and hear it in every single play. They wanted to see this so badly, and I don't blame them. If I was there, I would have been there, a part of it with bells on. And the fact that you've now seemingly have helped beat and conquer every narrative that ever went against Jim Harbaugh going into this year, you've all but done it. You've proven that you can win on the road. You've proven that you can beat quality teams at home or on the road. You've proven that you can fight through adversity. You've proven that you're not some pushover. You've proven that you can finally beat Ohio State. But there's still one more thing left to prove. So that's still up yet to come. But I'll just say this as a Michigan fan, lifelong Michigan fan, who frankly, I was too young to remember 97. So I didn't have those fresh, good enough memories in my view, but to experience. So after going through all these shortcomings to so close yet not so yet so far away, whether it be 2006, 2007, 2016, 2018, football, basketball, whatever it is, you name it. I've been through it all. And to see this moment, I gotta say, in spite of all the great basketball moments I've seen, there's a reason why Michigan is known as a football school, because that moment, recency bias or not, whether it's fair or not, that instantly vaults into my top 5, if not top 3, favorite moments as a Michigan sports fan I could ever remember. So the fact that I got to experience that, witness that, see that, is something I'll never forget. I'll never ever forget.
Yeah, and
Unbelievable.
I know. And Harbaugh went to the right defensive coordinator, Mike Macdonald. Mike Macdonald replacing Don Brown. Mike Macdonald made the difference with a great defensive play calling.
It certainly helped that Harbaugh took that pay cut, huh? Think
Yeah,
about that. Think about that. If everything else comes to fruition, always think about that move. Period.
yeah, yeah. And now Harbaugh's contract extension, think about that, is finally paying off because, hey, they beat Ohio State finally with him at the helm. Frank, anything to add on that?
Wow. I'm trying to think where I begin to follow up what Ed said, but the first thing I do want to say is, Ed, enjoy every moment of this, my man. You've been waiting so long for it that you have earned the right to enjoy it. Just soak it in every day you get hit leading up to when you play in Indianapolis next Saturday against Iowa. So getting back to the game, I'm just going to say that Michigan flat out beat Ohio State at their own game. I said last week to you guys, this is a game they had to either nut up or shut up, and they did just that. They came out running the football. Hassan Haskins, as Ed alluded to, put on a performance that definitely is at the same table as Tim Biakabatuka in 95. I think Chris Perry maybe in 2003. Just to name a few. Went out, and like I said, how Ohio State always wanted blood in this. Well, let me tell you something. It was Michigan who came out looking for blood in this rivalry. Hassan Haskins with his 5 touchdown performance, or Aiden Hutchinson, 3 sacks in a game, set the school record. Ed, I can't recall a Michigan defensive lineman having that good of a season, probably going back to maybe Brandon Graham or Lamar Woodley.
Yeah. I was gonna say Brandon Graham with that 06 defense under Ron English. By the way, it's worth mentioning that in that same game where Aiden Hutchinson set the single season sack record, he also surpassed his dad, Chris. So now he can hold that distinction for a little bit of bragging rights in the Hutchinson household.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, for sure. And even then, I think a lot of the credit does go to Mike Macdonald, because he wasn't stubborn like how Don Brown would always be, saying, we're just going to blitz it. We're going to play bully ball. No, you got to play the game you have to play instead of the game that you might want to play. And they did just that. In fact, Michigan just flat out executed better defensively and offensively. And here's another fun fact for you. In the second half, Michigan's offense never faced one single third down. I think that just shows how efficient the Josh Gatz had of a game plan. And I'm not trying to throw a damper on things, but does he possibly get some looks as a head coach somewhere down the line after calling that great of a game?
I would say if you're not, you'd be a bit of an idiot, a bit oblivious to not pay attention to see what Gaddis not just has done for this game, for this season, but his resume going back to what he did back at Alabama. I think that warrants some consideration. So yeah, I'm preparing myself for that. How many years did I spend begging somebody to take Pat Narduzzi away from Michigan State's defense? So I could see Gaddis getting some looks down the line for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, and also this also eliminates a lot of the narratives that have been said about Harbaugh, and I think it goes back to our Big Ten media days when he said we have to beat our rivals or die trying. That told me that he knew his ass was in the jackpot this season, and you know what he did about it? He manned up and said, "I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that we take care of business and we beat Ohio State," and he did just that. So you have to give a tip of your cap to him for making sure his guys stayed focused day in and day out and didn't get high off their own supply. I mean, look, even losing a close one to Michigan State, they could have easily just said, you know what? Well, we're just going to get our ass kicked in big games. They didn't. They kept playing. And they kept grinding. They kept pushing forward. And even when it came down to brass tacks against the Buckeyes, guys, they probably played what I think was their best game of the season so far.
Absolutely.
And I'll be interested to see what happens come Big Ten championship game and maybe even college football playoff. But they got to take care of business next week first, which I'm sure we're going to get to a little bit later.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, when the football gods give you a gift like they did with Purdue beating Michigan State first and foremost, knowing how likely it was that Ohio State was going to beat Michigan State anyway, yeah, you got to take advantage of that. Michigan did. They handled their stuff, and now they are the ones going to Indy.
Yeah, because they watched the video and everything like that. They did plenty of scouting reports, which were enough. And Michigan beat them by 15. 15 points. Offense gets you points, but defense wins games, period. So that leads us to number 2, Michigan, taking on the 15th ranked Iowa Hawkeyes for the Big Ten Championship in Indianapolis, Indiana at Lucas Oil Stadium this upcoming Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern on Fox. And we're going to get to that right now with the Viget analysis and scoring prediction. Ed, take it away, my friend. Then we'll get to Frank to follow up.
Oh my goodness! This marks what, the 10th or 11th game. This marks now 10 years officially. Ever since we started the realignment era, whatnot. This is the first time in the entire existence of the Big Ten championship game that the Michigan Wolverines are finally going to be playing there. It is. I expect that crowd to be very pro Michigan because I think that crowd, they're going to travel no matter what. That place is going to be Ann Arbor South. I really think that's going to be the case there when you factor in everything that this fan base has waited for such a long time for a moment like this. Everything that they thought was going to happen or should have happened by now, it's finally here. They're going to be ready like warriors at that game at that dome. So that's enough for the fans. But in terms of the game itself, how are things going to go down? How I expect, where I think things might go down. These two teams are essentially mirror images of each other, but different levels. Iowa is not known for having such a prolific passing attack. They have a stout, stitchy defense of their very own. And they, just like Michigan, like to run the football. But when it comes down to getting things done, what it mattered most, or having enough, oomph or separation, the closeout games, or not make central crucial mistakes. We saw how they performed in crucial moments that's led to their loss. Because remember, they were ranked number 2 in the nation themselves at one point, and then they fell off the wagon. It hurt their chances to get to the playoff. But look at them. Speaking of, like I mentioned with Michigan bouncing back, getting knocked down, and getting back up and bouncing off. Look at Iowa. Many people thought their season was done weeks ago. Now here they are with a chance to win the Big Ten title and go to a Rose Bowl. And also a chance to ruin Michigan's season again, much like they did in 2016. Yeah, you got to be jumping for joy if you're an Iowa fan. But if you're a Michigan fan, I would expect to see a low-scoring affair. I don't think it's going to be as much of a high-scoring game than what we saw against Michigan State or against Ohio State. It'll be more low-scoring. I think we will see an effective and efficient running attack unless Iowa absolutely stuffs them and is able to create turnovers. I think Michigan over time is going to wear them down, pound them out. And as long as the defensive front gets to the quarterback, does what it creates pressure, does what it's supposed to do, I think we can see Michigan pull away from this game midway through the third at the very least. So, taking all that into consideration, my bigger predicted score is going to be Michigan celebrating finally winning the Big Ten championship game, punching their ticket to the college football playoff. Michigan 31, Iowa 16.
31-16, Michigan grounding Iowa with their defense, of course, led by Aiden Hutchinson and stuff like that. That would be a really good prediction. Frank, your Viget analysis and scoring prediction.
I think first and foremost, when I look at a game like this, is there might be a bit of a letdown that you have to guard against. I mean, you're coming off of a big win over Ohio State, who you hadn't beaten since 2011, and you're thinking, oh my God, we're in Indy. And then you realize that Iowa's on the other side, and that's been a team that has been a thorn in Michigan's side in the past. If I can recall correctly, 1985 and 2016, Michigan was ranked number 2 and played the Hawkeyes and lost. So I'm pretty sure that Harbaugh's going to emphasize to the guys, hey, just because we beat the Buckeyes and finally got past that giant, don't sleep on Iowa. Because this is an Iowa team. They're not prolific offensively. Spencer Petras, their quarterback, has been out a little bit here and there. I know he was dealing with a bit of a flu bug last week. He did play against Nebraska in the second half. But I think the main guy you have to worry about is Tyler Goodson, their running back, who I believe you're going to see play in the NFL. I mean, he's going to probably be carrying the ball a lot and probably catch out of the backfield as well. But Iowa really makes their hay on defense. They are one of the best teams in the country at getting takeaways. Hey, so I think you really got to take care of the ball against them. And, I kind of see somewhat of a low-scoring game, too. I think Iowa's going to just kind of hang around and make it interesting. But, again, if Michigan plays like they did against Ohio State, and obviously that's going to be tough to replicate, but I think they can do it. I think they will slowly grind out, I'll say, Michigan 31, Iowa 21, with Hassan Haskins icing it with a late touchdown.
All right. Frank says 31-21, Michigan. I'm going to go Michigan 31, Iowa 18. I'm going to arrange it as best I can, and that's all I could do. Actually, I'm going to go Michigan 38, Iowa 18, because Hassan Haskins is going to keep on pouring it on, and he's going to get some help as well. Kane McNamara is still going to gel on. Blake Corum's going to keep doing his thing after returning from injury.
That score probably indicates maybe like a defensive touchdown might happen or something from special teams.
Including a pick six. Why not? Or a scoop and score on a fumble.
Yeah, this defense has shown they've done the capability to not just take the ball away from you, but score on the same play. We saw it against Maryland. We saw it, replay or not. We saw it against Michigan State. So I wouldn't be surprised if that comes up big here too.
Yeah. So again, my Viget scoring prediction: Michigan 38, Iowa 18. So that is Michigan football. Now we transition to the Michigan State Spartans. They edged the Penn State Nittany Lions 30-27. Spartans jumped out to a 14-0 lead. Penn State came back to tie it up. Michigan State retook the lead 17-14. Penn State took their first lead 20-17 in the third quarter. It was back and forth, and Michigan State all of a sudden led by 10 late in the fourth. Penn State got in a touchdown, tried the onside kick, recovered by the Spartans, of course, and they held on for the victory 30-27. It's their first New Year's Six Bowl trip in a few years. Now, their secondary defense let the Nittany Lions hang around. Speaking of hanging around, but Jalen Reed with a leaping grab near the pylon, that was the highlight of the game. And of course, James Franklin trying to coach like he's trying to save his own job, but Michigan State just by the hair of the chinny chin chin barely held on. Ed, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Frank. Ed, what are your thoughts on Michigan State and Penn State?
My thoughts in terms of MSU versus Penn State, knowing for the fact that they really, in a way, didn't have much to play for, because they were knocked out of the Big Ten and playoff race by Ohio State the week before. So you were wondering, what was their attitude, what was their mindset, how would they look mentally coming into this, and it's not to mention take consideration some of the injuries that were had been affecting them and still continue to affect them. Like Naylor is still out, so knowing all that and the fact that there was a lot of that snow that we saw in Ann Arbor definitely made its way to East Lansing. So seeing all of that and knowing how they were still be able to be efficient and perform as good of a unit as you can see was quite impressive on their part. And too much of one thing to look at if you're a Michigan State fan from a perspective of, man, we got close. It was way better than I expected it to be, but now I want to expect more from next year. That should be the level of expectations that's been growing and should continue to grow. You've seen Mel Tucker do the job he has done this year. He's more than earned that extension. And I think the fact that he was able to keep this team as motivated as possible was quite impressive. Kenneth Walker had himself another 130-yard game. He has been the MVP of this team, bar none. And I hope this isn't the last time we saw him play in front of East Lansing. I hope he for his, and this is me, a Michigan fan saying this, I hope he comes back for another year. I hope he doesn't leave early for the NFL, because it'll be quite a loss, because I remember he was hearing some questions about it in the post game. He shrugged them off, but hopefully, we don't see, from MSU's perspective, we don't see that that potential story develop any more further than that. But look at them. Look at the position that they were in, really, from the moment that D'Antonio announced his retirement to where they are right now.
Well, his resignation.
His resignation, retirement. But to seeing when D'Antonio left, and fast forward all these months and a couple of years or so later to right now, that is quite remarkable. And they more than earned it, deserve this New Year's Six Bowl that they're going to get. And frankly, I'm kind of glad that they got Mel Tucker back, because that means that from here on out, whenever we see these rivalry games, we're going to see the absolute best of Michigan going up against the absolute best of Michigan State. Leave it out all on the field. No excuses. I like that.
I like that too. Frank, Diaphragm, your analysis on Michigan State and Penn State.
Well, I will say that I was actually in attendance at this game, and it was actually kind of a pretty cool scene, just all the snow falling, and
I saw that on
a good
Instagram.
football game. Oh, yeah. And, I think you really have to give a lot of credit to Mel Tucker and the rest of the staff, because there had been a flu bug running through the locker room after the Ohio State game, and there were injuries too. Jaden Reed was seen in a boot after that game. I know that Kenneth Walker had been dealing with some of the flu issues, same with Peyton Thorne. He even sounded like he had been battling some sort of upper respiratory bug. He sounded kind of hoarse post-game, but, you have to give credit for the guys for toughing it out in some adverse weather conditions. Obviously, Kenneth Walker having another big game, 138 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Jaden Reed, especially that catch that he had on 4th and 15, not only was that highlight reel worthy and might be the catch of the season for the MSU Spartans, but also that shows one thing. Mel Tucker plays to win the game, because he knew that he wasn't going to get much with field goal kicking, because Matt Coughlin, I could tell he was limping out there, and they had to throw, I believe it was Ifland, Ruffland, forget the name, escapes me, and he wasn't really that strong or accurate either. So Mel said, hey, we got to go for it, and it paid off. and they took care of business. And of course, James Franklin went full James Franklin and made some questionable decisions in the game, like going for it on 4th and short when you're well within field goal range, or icing your own kicker. I mean, it just goes back to what I said, how much of a poor in-game decision coach he is, and now Penn State's got stuck with him for another 10 years and paying him $85 million over those 10 years. So,
I'm shocked they
anyways,
extended him.
yeah,
By that many
I think that.
years for that much money. Yikes.
I mean, look, I know Mel Tucker got a 10-year contract extension, but you know what? But he was getting interest from other schools, and even the NFL was calling about him too. And Michigan State said, you know what? We got to keep him here. We're going to pony up. James Franklin wasn't generating that much interest other than maybe, oh, he might go to USC. Yeah, that didn't happen. And they just pay him because, yeah, he's a great recruiter, but poor in-game coach. And I'll just leave it at that. And as for Michigan State's win, 10 wins in what's technically year 1 of Mel Tucker, because last year I considered year 0, given that he came in when COVID hit, couldn't really go out and meet his players in person, only had about 30% of the playbook installed last season. Then he raised the transfer portal, gets his guys in. And in a 10-win year, when Vegas expected them to win like 4 or 5 games, I'll call that a success. I mean, yeah, they could have beaten Purdue and played better against Ohio State, but you know what? I'm not going to just cry over spilt milk. I'm just going to enjoy the moment, say, hey, we got a chance to play for a New Year's Six Bowl. I mean, it sounds like they're saying, depending how next week shakes out, either Fiesta Bowl likely against Notre Dame. I would definitely watch that. Or maybe even the Peach Bowl in Atlanta. And if a bunch of craziness happens, going to Florida for the Outback or the Citrus wouldn't be too bad either, but somewhere where the weather's warm. And plus, you'd have guys like Jalen Naylor back from an injury, and Charles Brantley as well, and even Tyler Hunt, who didn't play. So get all those guys back, get healthy, end the year on a high note. And Kenneth Walker, for what it's worth, did say that he will play in the bowl game. And I don't know if he's going to be coming back next season. I think he should go to the draft because he's going to be a top 2 running back selected, and running backs don't have that long of a shelf life in the NFL. So there's that.
Yep, there's that indeed. So we'll see who Michigan State will play starting next week, while Michigan takes on Iowa for the Big Ten championship. That's college football. Now we transition to pro football, and sorry guys, but we have to do this. The Lions choke and lose to the Chicago Bears 16-14 on Thanksgiving Day to stay winless and keep possession of next year's first overall pick of the 2022 NFL Draft. So apparently, like I proved on social media, staying winless is the best way, if not the only way, to keep sole possession of that first overall pick for next calendar year. So that being said, Jared Goff throwing 2 touchdown passes to Reynolds and Hawkinson, the holding calls of the Lions' last possession of the football. I was only listening to it on the radio, but so I couldn't even tell whether they were bad calls or not, good or bad calls, whether they were good or bad calls. But then the terrible defensive play calling and back-to-back timeouts, which you can never do, they led to the that's a delay of game penalty. They led to the game-winning field goal as time expired. Their defensive line, I'll give credit to, but their secondary defense, crap as usual, especially in high-leverage situations when the Lions are trying to hold a lead. That happened for the 3rd time this season, and they lost on a game-winning field goal as time expired. And that's on the Lions. Their secondary defense did not do their job, and their defensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn, did a pretty poor job with the play calling. I'm not saying it was clock management or anything like that. It's just play calling. So, Ed, as always, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Frank. Ed, I mean, can't blame too much on the refs. It's mostly the Lions.
No, it's called this team. Almost admittedly, again, it sounds like a broken record, but their track record in finding new ways to lose football games and come up short in ingenious ways may be their best gimmick or the most attractive gimmick that they've had as their entire run as a franchise. Because you can find so many different ways. The fact that they found 3 different ways on how to lose on a game-winning field goal this year alone is a testament to the statement I just provided. But let's go into what led into all of that. The offense, because I'll say this, the defense, yes, you can blame them for not getting the job done on that last drive. But I got to say, when you've been giving up the amount of points that this defense has been doing now compared to what they were at the start of the year, or at least in their last couple of games, I know they got blown out in a couple of them. But what they've done recently, they have put this team in as much a position to win as they could. They've done the best that they've absolutely done. They've gotten takeaways. They got another one on Thursday with that interception. They've had that. That's what now their 6th or so takeaway in the past 3 games. So you can't say this team isn't trying or isn't showing effort from a defensive standpoint. They have put in the work. They have put this team in the spot needed to be to where they could have possibly come away with a victory. It's been on this offense. And when you are showing that you have either no confidence and or no clue as to what you're going to do with your quarterback or what your position is at quarterback currently, even especially when Goff got hurt, let alone when he's there and healthy or healthy enough to play. And when you factor that in to, I don't know if it's a clash, I don't know if it's a feud, whatever it is, but between Anthony Lynn and Dan Campbell, I don't know what's causing a disagreement or a rift. Maybe Anthony Lynn is salty that Campbell took advantage, decided to take over the play calling duties, whatever it is. It's not working, and it hasn't worked, and now it's showing itself on the field more and more because when you are not being able to establish the run the way you would want to on 1st and 2nd down, it makes calling on 3rd down virtually impossible because you know your quarterback isn't good enough to do something for you on 3rd down, and you know your defense is likely expecting you to make one play call anyway. We've seen it now over how many times now over the past 3 or so games. So you're showing that you're that limited, but you keep doing it is bordering on definition of insanity levels. So that's on Dan Campbell for that. And I got to put some of that on Anthony Lynn too, because it was how his performance and how he had the offense doing is what led to that. And at least contributed to what we're seeing right now. Obviously, things have not improved since Campbell took over play calling duties, but still, some of it is on him. And you know what, Tanner? I would put some of the blame on Aaron Glenn because one of those guys that are on the field, they've got to be aware of that rule. I know it's a dumb rule, but it's a rule nonetheless. We saw what Mel Tucker did against Michigan with the 3 timeouts in a row. You know, some people complain about that. This is the reason why they complain, because you can't do that in the NFL. And regardless of whether you think your team's in a bad spot or not, or they may take advantage of it or get a bad play, or it may look like a busted coverage, whatever, you got to be aware of the rule at all times and know that taking that time out hurts them more than anything. Because let's say, for example, if they gave up the 1st down or just let them walk in for the touchdown, that would have been better than committing the penalties that you did that put them in position to get the 1st down and run out the rest of the clock. Like, just let them walk in or at least get that 1st down. Do something to help conserve your timeouts wherever you can, so you save as much time as possible. But you can't even execute that. You bungle that, and that led to where, right, like I said, Chicago was in complete and total control. They got that ball with like 8 minutes left to go in the 4th, and they never gave it back. Think about that. So, again, new and inventive ways to lose, especially on Thanksgiving. The penalties, not just on the defense, but oh my goodness, I've lost count how many times I saw false start or holding back to back to back to back on just one drive alone. Certainly, things did not help when DeAndre Swift, who's been their most or probably their only effective player on the offensive side of the ball the past few weeks, he got hurt. He separated his shoulder. So he was done for the day. It was like, great. So all that was one big jambalaya of, oh my goodness. So I'm glad I was able to get some of my Thanksgiving dinner down earlier before I started watching the rest of that game. Otherwise, it would have ruined the mood. But what can you say? Lions disappointing on Thanksgiving is as wholesome of a tradition and as American as you can possibly get.
Yeah, definitely. Of course. Frank, your analysis on the Lions.
All I'm going to say is this offense is so putrid. I don't get why Dan Campbell thinks he can make it better by taking over play calling when he had never had a play calling gig in the first place. I just cannot understand that, and it's mind boggling. And also, have somebody on your sideline who knows the rules of the game. Taking back to back timeouts like that, doesn't work like that. Dan, you coach in the NFL. Know the effing rules. Oh, my goodness. Look, I'm watching that whole experience was just frustrating in general because you know that, like Ed said, the defense actually went out and did their job. They played hard. They gave their max effort. It's the offense that doesn't. I know there's not a lot of talent there. But look, Dan Campbell, Mr. We're going to be aggressive. We're going to bite a kneecap. And then you go and get ultra conservative late in the season. He's
Yeah, nice
skating on very
gimmick.
thin ice with me right now. And look, truthfully, I don't know where another win's going to come this season. And because it ain't going to be against a divisional opponent. And I don't think you're going to beat anybody else. I mean, some are saying, whoa, they could beat Atlanta. Well, Atlanta actually has some talent that can win you games. So I'm just expecting 16-1. And whether or not that means Campbell is one and done, who knows? All I'm saying, Brad Holmes, this is on you, man. You're going to have a big decision to make when the season ends.
Yeah, firsthand. And you got a lot of work to do on your roster as well.
Yeah. I was gonna say you have a big decision, not just in regards to Dan Campbell, but with a lot of people on not just that staff, but also on that roster too. As much as I don't want them to do it, like they might have to consider, having a detour and go early in terms of rebuilding that whole QB spot because it's. I don't know if the fans are going to be able to take another year of this without absolutely revolting live on the field.
Yeah, and fans on Twitter were roasting Dan Campbell and his coaching staff, and they wanted him out. And some of them were even calling for the Fords, including myself, to sell the team, of course. And we all know that they should sell the team. But really, it's on Brad Holmes to make a tough decision on the coaching staff, especially at the top with head coach Dan Campbell and the roster. Like I said before, he's going to have to fix the entire offense and defense. Well, I don't know about special teams. They don't do too much. They already cut Ryan Santoso. They got a better kicker. They got a better field goal kicker. The Lions do. So Lions home against the Minnesota Vikings Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern time on CBS. And we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Frank. Ed, your Viget analysis and scoring prediction, please.
Yeah, I would expect, in regards to what we're going to see in this game, much like we saw the one in Minnesota, more so, it's going to be a lot of Minnesota doing what they can at will with the run. They're going to be smart with the pass. Even though I don't like Kirk Cousins or think of him as a big time quarterback, he's sure as hell been efficient this year. He's only had 3 interceptions compared to 23 touchdowns. And he's got his, so it's not his fault necessarily that this team has a 5-6 record. So, the way that this team was able, they just put 34 on the Packers last week, and they've looked outstanding while doing so in that one. So knowing that they may have to they're fighting, they got something to play for more in this one. I'm surprised that the spread is not bigger than what it currently is. But we'll see. My bigger predicted score is going to be Vikings 30, Lions 13.
Good prediction. 30-13 Vikings, says Ed. Frank, your vignette analysis and scoring prediction on Vikings at Lions.
Well, one thing that did happen here is that Dalvin Cook from the Vikings, a running back, did get injured, so I don't think that he's going to be playing next week. I don't think that makes too much of a difference. So, and plus Kirk Cousins, as Ed mentioned too, really efficient season, given the fact that he had always been known to turn into a pumpkin in big games. He won't here. I'm going to go Vikings 24, Lions 13.
All right. I'm going to go Vikings 20 and the Lions 10. I'm going to go a little bit under this time instead of ranging it. That is our vignette analysis and scoring prediction for Vikings at Lions. Now, the Pistons, they're taking on the Los Angeles Lakers at Staples Center. They got destroyed 2 nights ago by the Los Angeles Clippers, or 2 days ago, if you will, on Black Friday. Cade Cunningham only 1 of 10, 0 for 5 from 3. It was just his off night. He's developed as of late, other than 2 nights ago on Black Friday. I mean, Jeremy Grant did lead with 20 points, but the rest of the guys, man, they just shot ice cold in LA. Just a horrible game. But the Pistons, they have a bad record as well, of course. But I think Cade Cunningham is better than that. Just had an off night. Right now, the Pistons, they are playing the Los Angeles Lakers again, like I said before, and I'm checking on them right now. 14-13 Lakers, 4:49 left, first quarter. Cade Cunningham, 2 points. Looks like 1 of 3 from the floor right now. It's only the beginning of the game. Only 7 minutes, 11 seconds of playing time for each starter. That's what I'm reading from the NBA.com mobile app.
Worth noting that both LeBron and Isaiah Stewart were both available for this game.
Yep. Yeah, it's and I'm pretty sure LeBron tried to apologize to Isaiah Stewart. He tried to make amends meet and try to make bygones be bygones.
Well, that's up to Stewart, because I think maybe in Stewart's mind he didn't think that was accidental by LeBron. So it's it'll be up to him as to whether or not he quote unquote makes amends or whatever. But what's done is done. I think it'll be better for Stewart and for LeBron that you acknowledge it, but then put it behind you and move on.
Yep, true. And then we got the Red Wings. Luke Skywalker Raymond scoring the overtime goal against the Buffalo Sabres. Jeff Skinner got the game-time goal with 1:37 left, with Tokarski pulled for the 6th skater. Yeah, that didn't take long. Sabres called a timeout, and they capitalized on it and made it work. But 26 seconds in, Lucas Raymond, the game winner.
For a brief second, before I get to the Red Wings, jumping back to the Pistons, I wanted to make mention of some things that they have to improve on. We know this team is not a good team, wasn't going to be a good team coming into this one, but there's some things you would like to see some development and improvement on, like having better job closing fourth quarters, especially when you have double-digit leads. You had a 15-point lead on the Heat. You had a 16-point lead on the Lakers. Maybe I got those numbers mixed up, but still double-digit leads on both those teams, and you couldn't finish in the fourth quarter. That's more than worrisome. Cade himself did not have a very good week, whether it be the performances you saw against the Clippers or the Bucks, or him getting manhandled by Anthony Davis late in the fourth last week. But that's okay. Those are his growing pains. He's going to experience them and learn from them and become a better player as a result. You just know it. Just give it time. That being said, he's still going to need some pieces around him that's going to uh, be able to improve, work well with how with his system of play, how he does things, and how they can both feed off each other and improve as a result. Because when I say by that, I mean players that can better move, be better effective weapons off the pick and roll. Obviously, needed shooting, whether it be mid range or the three, especially at the three, because they've been god awful at some points with the 3-point shooting. And we're going to get to that with the Wolverines basketball in just a second. But um, all that, now I don't know if you're going to do that through trade or with some of the guys that you drafted this year. I do know with the Isaiah Stewart suspension that opened up the room for Luka Garza to get some minutes. So good on him. That'll only help his development even more with him getting reps. So that's good. But that's what you want to see the Pistons make improvement upon. Now that's on to the Red Wings. I liked how their defense, not just their defense, but also their penalty kill. It contained St. Louis. They had 3 penalties throughout that whole game, not a single and not one power play of their own. That didn't bother them. They killed all 3 of those power plays. They gave up a single power play goal. I gotta agree, Lucas Raymond, he's more than making his case to win himself a Calder Trophy. With the way he's been playing just the past couple months alone, imagine if he keeps this up, was it going into, I would say at least past the All-Star break? Yeah, I would consider that Calder Trophy consideration. Moritz Seider, what he's been doing, being able to do, think about this, guys. The top 4 guys and players in terms of the top points production, the top 4 point getters for the team: Larkin, Raymond, Seider, Bertuzzi. Those are the guys that you want to build this team around, and they've been doing that. They've been performing effectively. Aside from the fact that we can't use Bertuzzi in Canada for obvious reasons, when he's there, this team has been rolling. And it also helps when the goaltender that you absolutely fleeced from the Hurricanes. Excuse me one second.
Alex Nedeljkovic.
Alex Nedeljkovic.
Thank you. Nedeljkovic. Seeing how he's performed, instead of using rotation between him and Grice, him getting more constant starts, that's helping more. And I think it's showing with how he performed, not just against St. Louis, but in other spots as well. It's showing that moving forward long term, he should be your primary goaltender, and it showed why you got him in that trade with the Hurricanes to begin with. It wouldn't hurt to make sure that Grice is at least competent or have someone that be competent enough in that backup spot. But yeah, Nedeljkovic is your starting goalie from this point on. You've made the right choice in that regard.
Yeah. Frank, anything to add on Pistons Red Wings?
Well, all I have to say about the Pistons, you got to be better at closing out fourth quarters when you have a lead, and that's going to come in due time. And Cade Cunningham, I know he's had some rough performances, but, it is what it is with him. As for the Red Wings, what can I say about Lucas Raymond? The guy's been a point-per-game player there, and he also joined his GM as the only players in franchise history to score an overtime winning goal before they turn 20 years old. Little fun fact for you. And again, kind of like what Ed alluded to, you're seeing Raymond, Seider, and all those guys. That's the Yzer plan paying its dividends so far. And it's only going to keep going up from here.
Yeah. And we're going to keep our eyes on them as well the whole season. So, as Ed mentioned, we were going to get to Michigan Wolverines. And may I add, Michigan State Spartans basketball. Ed, any analysis thus far on the Wolverines and Spartans playing in their tournaments?
Well, to keep it brief, because I know we're running short on time, but what we've seen Michigan this past week, whether it would be the loss to Seton Hall, the loss to Arizona, um, it is worrisome because you got a big game coming up shortly against North Carolina. You don't want to embarrass yourself in front of the country, but here's things. Forget about that one game. There's things you need to prove on long term that's going to help your season move forward. Improved 3-point shooting is a must. Okay, you can't go out there. Well, against Arizona, they have made 1 3-pointer the entire game. You can't go out there shooting as badly as you did against Seton Hall, for example, or like you did against other teams. In this league, in this day and age of basketball, both college and pro, you need effective shooting, and the shooting, the efficient scoring, from especially from three, is nowhere near as it was last year. So at least so far, so they've got to improve on that. Whether it be better schemes, better setups, or having the right players in there at certain moments and spots, but they need to tackle that as quickly as possible. What else? Another thing that helps, taking care of the ball. These high rate of turnovers where you're getting 15, 16, or even 21 that I saw in one game recently. It's a big problem. And because when you turn the ball over, that leads to transition points, can put you behind further quicker than anything, almost anything out there on the floor. So limiting your turnovers would be a bit help, in addition to what I already mentioned with the free throw shooting. And also, I got to see Hunter Dickinson take over more. I know he got a lot of hype and attention coming into this season. Granted, that means defenses are going to game plan and scheme around him more as a result, but I got to see him get involved. I got to see him be that force that he was last season. I don't know what's the reason or what has been limiting that, but he's got to find a way around it. Be better, play better. That's all there is to it. Michigan State, I will say, before that loss to Baylor, they had won 5 games in a row. Granted, it wasn't as strong of competition that they've done in facing, say, for example, Kansas and now with Baylor, but they did get a win against UConn, a ranked UConn team, I might add. But again, just like I said with Michigan State's having their own issues with turnovers. Even Izzo has said it in the post-game press conference. We have got to do better in terms of taking care of the ball, and I agree, because you got one more test coming up before your conference schedule kicks in, and that's Louisville, another primetime game, out-of-conference opponent. These are indicators of how people are expecting you to go when you face the upper echelon teams before you get to the conference schedule and before you get to a tournament. So what you do in these games shows a preview of what you can do later on in the season. It's imperative that you be at your very best for those games. So we'll see what goes against Louisville, but those are things I see in both teams that they need to improve upon from here and to at least when before conference schedule begins.
Yeah, and Louisville already without can play even without Rick Pitino, if you know what I'm saying. So, Frank, anything to add on Michigan and Michigan State in basketball?
Well, starting with Michigan, obviously, as I alluded to it, 3-point shooting has got to be better, whether that's running different sets or players executing, and also hitting your free throws as well. That's just something that's a sticking point for me as someone who coaches high school basketball. Free throws are a fundamental part of the game. And also taking care of the ball as well. Michigan uncharacteristically turning the ball over, that can't happen. I mean, I saw that they escaped Tarleton State, if I'm saying that correctly, who I had never even heard of. I guess there's some small school out of Texas. So hopefully
they got one win on the
up.
season. That's how
Yeah.
much you've heard of them.
So
Wow.
obviously, hopefully Juwan can get him back on track before they play North Carolina in the Big Ten ACC Challenge, which I think should be a pretty decent game. As for Michigan State, obviously I didn't expect them to win the whole battle for Atlantis. Losing to Baylor is nothing to be too ashamed of. Baylor's a defending national champion, and they're a great team. But getting a couple of confidence-building wins against a pretty solid Loyola team, coached by Drew Valentine, son of Carlton, older brother of Denzel, who are both Spartans, and I still believe Drew might be a guy who might take over for Izzo when he retires. That's another topic for another time. But also
Yep.
went against a pretty good UConn team that I think could make a deep run in March too. You're seeing this Michigan State team grow up a little bit. Other guys stepping up, whether it was Malik Hall against Loyola, even Marcus Bingham with his alley-oop dunk against Loyola that put him ahead. And even Jay Nakins lost to Baylor. I thought he was a bright spot as well. So we'll see what happens when they play Louisville on Wednesday. Hey, they're going to have to take care of business. That's going to be a tough game. But, hey, at least you're back at the Breslin Center at home and last test before Big Ten play.
Yeah, and we'll keep an eye on Michigan and Michigan State in basketball. The ACC Big Ten Challenge is coming up next. So, with that being said, the What We've Learned segment. What I've learned, the Wolverines must not get too carried away by their victory over the Buckeyes in a game where Hassan Haskins just pulled a Sergei Fedorov. Remember when he scored 5 goals? I forgot to mention
Good analogy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mentioned that to myself while watching the game at Buffalo Wild Wings in Sault Ste. Marie with my my new girlfriend, Stacy Crawford. But all that being said, but what they can do, the Wolverines, is use that same firepower physically and mentally that they used against the Buckeyes this upcoming Saturday against the Iowa Hawkeyes for that Big Ten title in Indy. Ed, you're up next, and then we'll go to Frank. Ed, what you learn?
Learned a lot of things, not just from what I saw yesterday, but frankly from this season and this year. From a sports standpoint and from a human standpoint, sports standpoint, things can develop, things can grow. As we saw, not just what the Tigers have been doing, but also what the Red Wings have been doing, what the Pistons are trying to do, and now, frankly, with our 2 college teams, both in football and basketball, that is a true example of that statement. And how it also connects to life. And another thing that I think is important of life, what I can learn is value and cherishing yourself and putting yourself above all else and above everything. So what I cherished yesterday against Michigan, like I said, it's going to go down as a moment I'll never forget my whole life, or as long
Against
as I live.
Michigan?
Excuse me, for Michigan. What they did against Ohio State is something I'll never forget.
Oh.
So knowing that, regardless of what happens against Iowa, or regardless of what happens in the playoff, if they get there, I don't care. I'm going to enjoy the ride as I can and also continue to watch and see the development. I hope for Jim Harbaugh's sake, this is truly the beginning of something, the way the 1969 win was the beginning for Bo Schembechler, how it ushered in his era of Michigan football that has spawned generations and continues to this day. I hope that something to that was the same thing for Jim Harbaugh for his sake. So regardless, I'm going to learn to value it and cherish it, just like I will so many other things in my life, and will continue to do so. So I'm just thankful and glad, again, that the thankfulness that I mentioned last week continues here. I'm thankful I got to see that. So once again, go blue. Thank you, guys.
Oh, yeah. And, yeah, definitely. And you're going to be here next week since Michigan won to analyze.
Potentially, at least to see what Michigan does, because with my schedules coming up, the way things are going to be having me preoccupied from a certain standpoint, I may we only be able to do from time to time, do certain spots, do certain segments, interviews, reviews, certain things. So if I can do at least one thing next week, it will be at least to cover that Michigan game.
Yeah, there we go. And then Frank and I will probably just cover the rest, I guess. So, Frank, what you learned? By the way, the Lions are going to hell.
Well, what I've learned from this week is when you have things that have been against you or going against you, it's how you respond to them. It's how you're measured by. Michigan, all the years they've come up short against Ohio State. all the narratives that said they couldn't get the job done. Well, guess what? They manned up, they broke through, and got it done. And for Michigan State, hey, dealing with the flu, bad weather, everything thrown their way, and coming off of a really bad loss, they bounced back, got off the mat, and got the job done. And I think that's really the epitome of both these teams in the state is they can get up off the mat, they can respond, they can get knocked down, they're going to get back up again, and they're going to keep fighting. For Michigan, they're going to have to do that next week against an Iowa team that plays with that similar resiliency.
Yep, definitely. As for the Big Ten championship, and talk about having the odds and adversity stacked against you, and you take it all out and win the game, period. So that's what we've learned. And before we go, this show, the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast, is sponsored by the Big It Sports mobile app, where great fans cover. Use the hashtag great fans cover to support the app. Download it on your phone from the Apple App Store or Google Play. Sign up and type in the referral code STABLES with a capital S and the rest of the letters being lowercase, including the letter B in the middle, as in billionaire, for Stables Media. Also, a shout out to Cali Tickets. Visit CaliTickets.com or call 877-225-8425 to purchase a ticket to one of their featured events. That's CaliTickets.com or 877-225-8425. Our next episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Stables Media is Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern on the dot. As of right now, we'll keep you posted on social media. We'll let you know about it if things change. But for now, Sunday at 9 as of right now. Subscribe to Stables Media on YouTube. Like it on Facebook as Stables Media in one word, and follow it on Twitter at Media Stables. Until then, for Ed Smith and Frank Vesner, I'm Taylor Phillips signing off. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DT2Phillips with 2 L's. Follow Ed Smith on Twitter and Instagram at EdSmith313. And follow Frank Vesner on Twitter and Instagram at Frank_Vesner, VAJCNER. And follow the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast, the show itself, on Twitter and Instagram at Michigan_Truth. Like it on Facebook as the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast, and follow it on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening, watching, downloading, and sharing. And remember, the truth is out there. TTFN, ta-ta for now. Power the people, handle the highway, rest our case. Stay out of trouble and stay safe.